was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a sizable crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind man, the son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent, but he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up, Jesus is calling you." He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him in reply, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man replied to him, "Master, I want to see." And Jesus told him, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. Like 19 years, I think it was, leading post-abortion healing retreats in the Diocese of Austin, this passage brings me back to those retreats and those very courageous women, mostly women, some men, who came to seek healing, because this is one of the meditations that we use in the healing process of that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who has been through any kind of a traumatic experience can certainly use it, or anyone who feels like they need any kind of healing can use it. And in the way that we did, we would have the women with their eyes closed. We would have them go one by one. As they listened to this passage, the passage was written out within a meditation. So it's sort of an Ignatian kind of meditation. So you're putting yourself in the scene, and so the narrative of what we were using would describe things like the dust of the road and the heat.
A few smells and bells included. Yeah.
So that you could feel more in the scene.
That's right.
And the women were to place themselves in the person of Bartimaeus. And now Jesus is standing right in front of you. You're sitting there with your eyes closed. Jesus is standing in front of you. What do you want him to do for you? What do you need? What healing do you need? And they would say that, and we would go around the room and do that. And then we would process, what happened there. That's the task for all of us in our prayer, is to be identifying in our life, what do we need Jesus to do for us? Because we do need him to do things for us.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one that I think we can all say all the time, because blindness is a condition that can be both of the eyes, but also of the mind, of the heart. A person who is blind and can't see out of their eyes, but who understands that every person that they encounter has a great dignity because of God's love for that person. That person is seeing better than many people who can see other people, but who believe that, well, those people don't have as much dignity as those people do. That's a blindness that's maybe even harder to heal in a way.
Yeah, this is a passage that I've gone back to many times in my personal prayer. And this line, there's certain lines of scripture that stay in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean, and I've never, good, bad, or otherwise, I've never been one to memorize scripture, and have a slip of scripture and know that, Jeremiah 28 verse, whatever, for I know the plans. I've never been one to do that, but there are certain lines. But this moment of Jesus turning to him and saying, "What do you want me to do for you?"
Mm-hmm.
This is just such a great passage to reflect on, like you said, one's dignity in the eyes of God, God's love for us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just if you ever want proof that God is not just, looking down on us and stepping on us like ants, or just saying, oh, I'm going to step on this guy for fun.
Right.
This is one of those passages. And so I'm not surprised that you guys used it, or you who were, leading those post-abortive retreats were using this, because it's extremely powerful to reflect on Jesus turning to you in a moment of asking for his mercy, for him to turn back and to say, because, what do you want me to do for you? Not just, not almost, it's not a prescriptive thing. It's an actual, what do you want me to do for you? And God is asking every one of us that.
Sure.
Especially when we come to him. I have some questions that I want to ask you that I was just thinking of. So he's saying Jesus, son of David. So he's saying Jesus, the Messiah, is what he's saying there. Have pity on me. And many are rebuking him, telling him to be silent. I always think this is interesting, because I always wonder, why are they telling him to be quiet? Are they telling him to be quiet because they're saying you don't matter, you're just a blind man, and blind men don't matter? Or are they saying, or are they saying that because because they think he's incorrect? You don't know who the Messiah is. This man isn't the Messiah. Are they? I can't help but wonder that. Why are they? Why? Because part of me is sitting there going, why do you care? Why do you care about this guy? And there's probably been times in my life where I have, judged somebody in a very similar context, but just, I don't know. So I asked that question to you, Bishop. Why were they rebuking him, or what's your interpretation of that? Is it just one of those things I said, or?
You recall the numerous times in the gospel where the disciples tell little children, look, go away, he's busy. And there's the scene where the woman who has a child who's possessed is following them and saying, heal my child, heal my child. And they're saying, look, go away, we're going over here, we're busy. And so I think it's just out of that, a kind of a human, mindless. In other words, they're not getting who he is. They're not understanding what he's here for. They don't understand that he's here precisely for Bartimaeus and people like Bartimaeus who have these kinds of needs. So Bartimaeus is causing problems. He's being loud, and they're trying to get by there, and they don't want their town to be embarrassed because now they've got this beggar who's yelling at the master who's come from far away to the town, etc. So it's those kinds of reasons, I think. Bartimaeus has heard that this famous guy is coming. The title Son of David they would have used for any person who they wanted to show honor to. So it doesn't.
Okay, that's a good clarification.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that Bartimaeus thinks he's the Messiah.
Before I lead the public astray.
But Bartimaeus does believe he can heal him.
Yeah.
Jesus, I want to see. So he must think he's more than just some rabbi, because the rabbis don't heal people of their blindness. Jesus refers to the man's faith. So there's something more here than just some honored rabbi.
That's right.
And Jesus recognizes it. And then when he receives his sight, he follows him. So those are two things for us to recognize. When we're healed, we don't just go back to what we were doing. The natural response should be, okay, let me give you my life. When we recognize that we've been healed, we give Jesus our life. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of that line. I mean, it's not simple, but it is, in the sense of Jesus saying, go your way, your faith has saved you.
I remember many years ago in the Austin Diocese, Bishop McCarthy, John McCarthy was our bishop then, and he put out a memo at one point to the parishes. And one of the things, I don't remember everything that was in the memo, but one of the things that he was cautioning people about was to make sure that you, the priests, but also anybody in your parish who is answering phones from parish secretaries or deacons or volunteers or whoever it is. Make sure that all of them are trained and understand that people who may call the parish may be calling for the first time in 30 years. They may be just now trying to come back to the church for some reason. And so they may call and say, I'd like to have my child baptized. That may be what they lead with. And if what they get from you is a long list of things you have to do to get that child baptized, well, first you have to come to this class. Have you been to this? Have you done this document? Have you done this? Then they may simply hang up and you'll never hear from them again.
Right.
So as a church, we should lead with what Jesus would lead with. That's amazing. Wonderful. Welcome back. Thank you. It's so good to have you coming back. Let me facilitate something for you. We're going to fill this form out and do this to help us get ready for the thing and blah, 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 whatever. But what they shouldn't be getting is just a formality of documentation and paperwork that has to be done. They should be met with a human response, a humane response. So that's one of the things that I think of when I see this. They rebuked him and told him to be quiet because he's embarrassing. He's embarrassing us. Look, this guy's come from a long way and you're sitting on the side of the road. You're blind because of your sins or the sins of your parents. That's what they thought blindness was about. So just calm down and be quiet over there. He's not here for you. He's here for great people.
Yeah.
No, he's here for this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Go your way. Your faith has saved you. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. It's powerful. Well, I know that sort of transitioning here, we in the coming weeks, and some folks have actually even already voted. But here we have the big election coming up here, and so as a Catholic, how do we vote, or how do you vote as a Catholic? Can I vote as a Catholic?
Not if you haven't registered.
That's right.
Make sure you're registered. It may be too late already.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the time of the year, actually even starting months ago, the time of the year when it's good for us to reread, good for us as Catholics to reread the document from the Bishops' Conference that's titled Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. And that document spells out a lot of the teaching that comes from the Catechism and that is coming from the bishops. And just the recognition that as Catholics, we certainly have a duty to participate in the civic life of the country that we live in and of the communities that we live in. And so voting is a part of that. We have this responsibility to vote. And it can be, admittedly, given the dysfunctionality in our political system these days, the division that is so deep in our country, there can be a temptation to say, look, I don't want to participate in it. But we really shouldn't do that. We really should participate in the process. It does require some work on our part. Living our life as a Catholic Christian is a never-ending learning way of living. In other words, we should constantly be learning what does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus Christ in the world today. There's no end to learning about Jesus. Mm-hmm. There's no end to knowing more about God. And there's no end to exploring this relationship that we have with him. Why would God care about us at all? The amazing gift of faith, which we just talked about with Bartimaeus, all of those things fill our mind and form our conscience. The more that we understand what does Jesus think of the world today, what would Jesus think of the issues that we deal with? What does the church teach us about various issues that are going on, especially in the moral sphere? Those are the things that help to form our conscience, and it's our conscience that helps to inform our voting. So, certainly Catholics can belong to political parties and can identify as Republicans or Democrats or independents or all these things. But what we are, first of all, is children of God, heirs to the life of grace with Christ, heirs to heaven. And that should be what we really vote out of, more than just simply some party affiliation or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so we should examine, what do they call the platforms? The party platforms. You can find those things online. We should try to inform ourselves about what are the issues that the candidates are talking about and what do they think about the various issues. For Catholics, for Christians, life is a big issue, not just the right to life, because we still have abortion in our country. So not just the right to life, but also the life of people after they're born, the things that impact their life. As bishops, we speak of abortion as a preeminent issue. The reason we speak of it that way is because if I don't have the right to life, nothing else matters. If you're going to kill me before I'm even born, what other rights are going to matter? So we put a special focus on that, but there are lots of other focuses or lots of other things that may sway a person's voting. A person cannot, in good conscience, a person cannot vote for, say, for example, abortion. A person cannot vote for abortion. A person might vote for a candidate who supports abortion, particularly if they see that that's the lesser of two evils. Maybe two candidates in a race both support abortion, but one supports it to this much and one to that much. That can help guide how I should vote in that case. So, that's a way for us to understand how conscience and the correct formation of conscience is so important to being able to discern these things carefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think sometimes in today's culture, it seems like we're being called to be citizens before being Catholic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And so another question coming out of that is does the church teach us to vote no matter what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let's talk about the first one, because, these days candidates spend $100 million or more on, in elections, on campaign advertisements and all that kind of stuff. You wouldn't spend all that kind of money on all the various kinds of things that it buys if it didn't work, if it didn't have some effect. So we should be careful of the fact that they're working hard to get us to believe in one direction. And we should be aware enough to understand, okay, I understand what they're wanting me to believe, but is that the correct thing? Is that what I should believe? And then what was the second thing you said was?
Oh, just like, does the church teach us? So it seems like there's a responsibility to vote, as a Catholic or as a Christian, and the responsibility you had mentioned, just a second ago about, sort of being a citizen, responsibility to be a citizen. And so just, does the church teach us to vote no matter what, Yes, I think that a person, theoretically a person could have some principled and conscientious reason why they were not going to vote. But to not vote just because you just throw your hands up and say, I give up, I don't care, out of apathy or something like that, I think that would be a moral fault, that a person has a responsibility to participate in the civic process of the place where they live. It would be perhaps clearer if we we're a smaller country. If we were a country of 100,000 people, wow, then we really see, man, everybody's vote is going to count for something. And sometimes we get lulled into the idea that, oh my gosh, we're hundreds of millions of people, my vote is not going to count for anything. Or I live in a Democratic state or a more Republican state. And so I know and it always votes this way. And it always, you could psych yourself out of anything and anyone.
Yeah. But if we're people of faith, which we are, one of the things is that we should be praying for our country and for our leaders. That's why we have within our intercessory prayers at Mass practically every day are prayers for the leaders of our country, of our city, of our political systems. So we definitely should be people of prayer. So that means we're not fatalistic. We believe that God plays a role in these things. And we should vote. We should not worry about how big an impact my vote is going to have as much as I have a voice. I have the opportunity to contribute. My faith informs how I view the world, and I want my vote to help shape the world as I view it. And that's how we vote.
So I think that's a good clarification, Bishop, just to know that, because I think sometimes we get locked into what is the right vote, and when I fill this bubble and I fill out this thing, that I'm right or I'm wrong, and you get overwhelmed with sort of anxiety, or you get the opposite of the sort of the apathy of it's all going to hell in a handbasket anyway. So what's the point? And so you take on a spirit of laziness, maybe one way or the other. It seems like I don't know if that's the right way.
It's kind of a cop out.
Yeah, it's a cop out either way.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of the extremes, but to participate. How can we interplay our faith with politics? Are they truly? Can they truly be interwoven together? Are they separate? This candidate seems like to me doesn't seem like they're really truly on the platform of following the USCCB
right.
or like Catholic moral life or whatever it may be.
Well, it is true that from the perspective of the Catholic faith, neither of the parties is 100% following the faith. So we do have to be, as I say, we do have to do some study and understand what are the issues. We can't weigh all the issues simply as being simply the same. Tax policy is not the same as the issues of life and so forth. And so we may end up, divided. We may end up in one race voting one direction in terms of a party, and another race voting in a different direction because we think this person is saying this about that, and that seems to fit better with what the church understands or what the faith understands about this. And so, it may actually be an onerous duty. It requires some work.
One thing that you shared with me, you shared this sort of ladder of how we receive information and interpret information. This sort of, we receive data and we develop meanings, and then from those meanings we come to assumptions.
Well, I think that in general, one way of understanding the divisions that exist in our country can be seen. And one of the things that it helps to explain is what people call echo chambers within the news media and so forth.
Right.
And so certainly politicians use these kinds of things to help their own cause, and their cause might not always be our cause, and so it's good for us to be aware of them. But, people can look up online the ladder of inference.
Ladder of inference.
And it's a model of understanding how we take on information, how we take in information, and how the information that we take in can affect the way that we view the world. And even this happens just in our own relationships with one another. It happens in relationships of spouses, of people with people they work with, and so forth. It begins with data that I select. I select from all the data that surrounds us in the world. I select certain data based on things that I either like or don't like or think or don't think. And whatever the data is that I select, I begin to form meanings out of that data because we're meaning-making machines. That's what we do. And then out of the meanings that I create out of the data, I begin to make assumptions about what those things mean, about the world that we live in and how those things relate. The assumptions that I make cause me to reach conclusions about certain things. I conclude this is always going to be this way on that side, and this is going to be this way on that side. Those conclusions affect the beliefs that I build about the world, that this is therefore true about this issue, and that's therefore true about that issue.
Yep.
And then the beliefs that I build affect the actions that I take in the world, how I respond to things in the world. But there's a loop that happens here, and the loop happens because the beliefs that I take, that I reach, these beliefs that I reach at the top of the ladder of inference, those beliefs affect the data that I then select.
Right. Based on what you believe, you're searching for a specific piece.
Now
of
I've
data.
reached a belief about this issue, let's say. Well, now that I've reached that belief, I may cut myself off from any other data, and I may only accept data that supports the belief that I've reached. But the problem there is that what if the belief that I've reached is not correct, or what if it's not properly nuanced? What if the issue is more complicated than I've come to understand it? And now I'm cutting myself off from data that might help me see it in a broader way. And so that helps to describe what happens to us when we end up in echo chambers where, for example, in the news media, we only want to watch a certain channel because the things they say match what I believe, and I don't want other data. And once we begin to do that, then we create these camps, right? And that division just gets deeper and deeper and deeper because now we're no longer even listening. We don't even know what the world is that those people live in. We don't even know what the data is that they're following.
Right.
Now, if I'm the owner of a news company, a company that makes news, it's helpful if I can understand what are the demographics of people who believe this, so I can build my news company to go after those people. Well, then all I have to do is just give them what they want to hear. So when we talk about voting and how candidates try to influence us and so forth, we have to be sort of savvy that all these other things are going on. And when we find ourselves really hating someone in our office, for example, because they have a certain bumper sticker on their car, well, that can happen. Something simple like that can happen. And so now we think, they have that bumper sticker, I know what that means, and then we form a belief, and the belief affects the data that we accept about the person. So instead of going and having a conversation with them and saying, how are you? I notice you have that bumper sticker. I thought maybe we could talk about what that means to you. I'd love to understand your perspective and so forth.
Bishop, your confidence is incredible. You lead with the bumper sticker in that conversation. That's amazing.
It's an example. We only have 30 minutes on this podcast.
That's right. That's right. We can't really dive deep. Yeah.
Well, we find some means of learning more about the person.
Yeah, and the political rhetoric is gotten kind of wild and crazy. I mean, is it possible to have, and dovetailing on that, is it possible to have a civilized discussion and maybe suss that out a bit more as you think about, okay, if I know somebody who maybe has a different belief than I do, how does one engage in that conversation?
Well, let's use the bumper sticker as an example.
Yeah.
The bumper sticker is a fact. That let's say it's a Trump bumper sticker. Okay, let's say that.
There you go. Specific.
That person has a Trump bumper sticker on their car. That they have the bumper sticker on their car, that's a fact. Everything else about that is an inference. We call it the ladder of inference. If I see someone, they've got a Trump bumper sticker on their car,
it's one piece
the
of
only
data.
thing that I know about them is that they have a bumper sticker on their car. Anything else I think I know about them is me making an inference from the bumper sticker. But we have to recognize that there are facts and there are inferences, or facts and perspectives, facts and assumptions. And we have to learn and become adept at separating those things out, because the assumptions are what shut us off from dialogue and talking to people and learning more about them. The facts are just the facts. They are what they are. What they mean, we have to do more to find out.
Yep.
And that's true in the political discourse too. You know, these crazy so-called debates that we have, you know?
Yeah.
People say X. Well, contained in the phrases that they just said is maybe one fact and a whole bunch of inferences. But the inferences don't mean anything. They just mean what that person thinks. But they're not facts. They're just assumptions. They're inferences that the person is making. So,
yeah, and it's hard. So the burning question that everybody wants to know out there is, Bishop, how would Jesus vote?
He would vote very carefully.
There you go.
He would have to, you know. I mean, he would have to work, like all of us would have to work, to get through all of this buzz, to understand what are the real issues, where do people really stand on those issues, how can we get to the most just and humane society, how can we get us to a society that best helps his mission in the world. Yeah.
Awesome. So get out there and do your part as a citizen.
If you haven't already.
If you haven't already, because you can already do that right now.
Thank you.